So without further ado, let's talk about availability forecasting. Quick round of introductions as we start. My name's Albert. I work on product marketing here at Beeswax, and joining me today is Tyler Dalemans, Senior Product Manager of our Data Platforms Engineering team. In other words, he focuses on the reporting that you all know and love, including availability forecasting. So let's get started and talk about what we'll cover today. So pretty straightforward agenda today. We're going to talk about the various features available in availability forecasting before we segue into a demo of the feature itself within the UI. And after that, we'll talk about the plans we have for the future of forecasting with Beeswax before closing with a little bit of Q&A. So now I'm going to pass it over to Tyler. Take it away.
Thanks, Albert. So I'm really excited to be here today to talk about forecasting. I know it's a feature that people have been talking about basically since I started at Beeswax. So I'm really delighted to have the chance to actually share what we've been working on for such a long time and show you the first iteration of what forecasting with Beeswax looks like. And with that, let me kind of define what availability forecasting is. So availability forecasting allows us to show it's embedded within your line item. It will show the number of auctions that matches the targeting profile and some of the creative properties for a line item that you've configured in Buzz today. And so this is really useful if before you turn on a line item, or even before you set up a line item, to just understand the available inventory profile and whether you'll have the auctions to scale a given campaign. This is, as mentioned, it's a profile of the inventory that's available to the auction. So this actually makes it very similar to meta markets, if people are familiar with meta markets, which is a tool that people have historically used to kind of understand the profile of auctions coming to a bidder and whether a campaign would scale effectively. But what we've done with forecasting is we've really moved that embedded into the line item workflow and made it respect all the targeting features. It's just part of the process of setting up a campaign. Very similar to meta markets, it returns most forecasts within a couple of seconds. So this is really great. You're able to go in, change a few targeting settings, see how that, narrowing your targeting criteria affects a forecast, adding a few segments may affect it, all that sort of stuff. You can very quickly make changes and understand how your forecast will be impacted. And then finally, one thing I'm really excited about is unlike meta markets, we're able to forecast on your audience data. So we do support first and third party segments in our forecasts with a few caveats, but I will kind of go into that a little bit later. So without further ado, I think it's just best to just show off the product to folks. So let me hop into Buzz. And so I kind of have my pre-baked example here. You can see within the line item workflow, you typically have your overview, your targeting, your creatives, etc. In the new analytics section, which we added earlier this summer for the bid decision flow tool, we've now also added a section for availability forecasts. And so what this does is it respects the targeting that you've set in your targeting criteria. So you can see here I've set, a bunch of exchanges and regions and states I want to target. I've even included a segment, and I'm able to generate a forecast based on that. And you'll see the metrics are the daily auctions and the estimated lifetime auctions. And so we extrapolate the lifetime auctions based on what we believe the daily auction number will be. And then we also use the start and end date to determine how long we think the life of the line will be. If you don't set an end date, we'll instead display this as a weekly forecast. So let me kind of show people how it works. So let's say I already ran this forecast. So let's say I want to come in, add New York. I'll save the line, come over here, run a forecast, and you'll see, I guess New York was already in this, or there was no New York traffic come to this bidder, but in theory, this should have shown some changes. And you'll also note that there's a percent change here as well. So if there had been a change between these two forecasts, this would show like an up or down percentage. And this will help you understand, okay, based on the targeting criteria I've changed, how did that sort of impact my forecast one way or another. One thing I haven't touched on is there is a sampling date range here. And so one thing to note about our methodology is we generate the forecast based on a historical sample of auctions that have come to your bidder. And so what that means is one of the unique things about the business model of Beeswax is you can come in and choose your profile of auctions you want to listen to. But for the purposes of forecasting, that may mean that a sample of your auctions from half a month ago may be very different than the profile of auctions you're listening to today. So uniquely, what we've done here is we offer you the choice to come in and modify the date range you want to sample over. So if you change this based on the profile of the auctions coming to your bidder, your forecast may change. And this also works in line with, being able to adjust for, the profile of your bidder, but also, you make a big change to, like, you're all of a sudden listening to traffic in a brand new geo, for example. It allows you to kind of work around all those changes to your bidder. One other thing that this is relevant for is, I'll talk about segments now, is for segment support, we do support it, but there's a requirement that the segment had to be existent in the bidder at the time of sampling. So for your first party data, that basically means you had to have defined the segment during the sampling date range, or for third party data, that means you had to be transacting on the segment during the sampling date range. And so if you want to sample on a specific segment, you should change your sampling date range to make sure that it samples over a date range where that segment existed in the platform. One thing I haven't talked about on the right-hand side is we also have this visualization that shows the forthcoming 7 days of traffic. So based on the patterns we've seen in the past, we will project what we believe the availability for that inventory profile is in the coming 7 days. And we believe this is really useful for not quite seasonality, but for example, you see big changes for this campaign on the weekend, for example. Maybe there's a lot less traffic on the weekend. If you want to kind of get a feel for how that kind of plays into your delivery on a day-over-day basis, that's kind of what this visualization is intended to do. It also shows, a comparison against the previous forecast, so you can kind of understand how that's this line here, how the changes to your targeting have impacted things. Now, one thing you'll note is I currently don't have a creative associated. So if you don't associate a creative, we'll check for the line item type. So this is a banner type, but we'll give you a forecast matching all banners. However, if you want to come in and add a creative and save and run the forecast, it will now limit to creatives that it will now limit the auctions to creatives that would match those auctions. So now you can see my forecast did change as a result of adding that creative, and it does show that percent change where there's almost a 45% reduction in the availability due to just limiting to that 300 by 250 banner ad. Other than that, that's really the extent of the feature. It takes into account, we support nearly every targeting key. As you saw earlier, there was that tooltip that mentioned I didn't have a creative associated. Similarly, while we do support most targeting keys, if there is a targeting key that we don't support, for example, lat long list is like an example of this, we will actually provide a tooltip informing you that that condition was skipped when generating your forecast. So we'll still generate a forecast, we just won't evaluate the targeting keys that are not supported. Yeah, and with that, I'm going to hop back over to the deck and talk a little bit about the roadmap. So obviously, this is just availability forecasting. So this shows the auctions that are available for you to purchase, but it doesn't do any consideration right now of, say, your bid price, your budgets, your frequency caps, etc. We're well aware this is like a very, very highly anticipated improvement to forecasting. And I'm really happy to share that we've already been working on this and been ideating on this in the months that have been preceding. So really, we wanted to get this version of the product into our customers' hands so we could start getting feedback and understanding how people are receiving the product, as well as making any improvements that we hear based on product feedback. Some other improvements in addition to releasing delivery forecast in the future will be We obviously want to continue to kind of monitor how the avails calculation as it exists today performs, like how accurate it is, what our customers' feedback is on it, and continue to invest time in improving that model. Additionally, so I did mention that creatives are supported. Creatives are supported at kind of a basic level. So things like your creative dimensions are respected, but some of the more nuanced properties of creatives may not be supported today. For example, like blocked categories, that's not supported today, but we do want to add support for enhanced characteristics of creatives in forecasts in the future. And then finally, obviously, as we continue to add new things to targeting, people are going to want to forecast on those things. And so we will continue to, as we develop features in that area of the product, be sure that forecasting complements that accordingly. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Q&A.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate talking us through all of that. So we do have a couple of questions that are trickling in. And by a couple, I mean one. So the first question is just, how is bid price factored into availability forecasting today?
Great. So that has to do with delivery forecasting. So right now, we don't actually assess the bid price at all. However, with the work we're doing on delivery forecasting, we will be basically building a model that takes your bid price into consideration and generates a win rate based on what we predict the inventory will clear at and the bid price you've set. And so the future iteration is anticipated to take that into account, and you would be able to modify that to see how it would affect your actual delivery based on a bid price you're setting.
Awesome. We have a couple more questions trickling in. Love it. Here's an interesting one. How will iOS 15 impact location forecasting?
So if we're not going to receive like the geo signals or things like identifiers that allow us to target based on geo in iOS in the future, we also will not consider those in the forecast. So again, if something for whatever reason cannot be like considered in the forecast, like for example, I said like let long lists, I assume we will adopt a similar strategy for like iOS 15 where we would basically want to match the condition where we would probably just like skip that check for forecasting when we generate it. So right now we have not like explicitly thought about how iOS 15 will be impacted, but it's worth considering from the product front. So thanks for the feedback, and we'll probably get back to you with some more information on this in the future.
Fantastic. A few more questions continuing to come in. Love it. Keep them coming. One more question is, do we plan on adding anything to understand individual users?
Individual users? Is that what you said?
Yes.
So no, not right now, unless I'm misunderstanding the question. Like forecasts will always be sort of generated on an aggregate basis, and you won't be able to like break down by, individuals at any level at this point in time. There's
we had a clarification come in,
okay.
And it was to understand scale with frequency caps.
Got it. Again, that is part of the delivery forecasting where we want to understand, and now, okay, that also helps understand the question. So first of all, I'll say frequency capping right now, not in scope of what we support today, but when we build out delivery forecasting, it's already something we've begun to think about on that front, how frequency caps will affect both scaling a campaign, and then as a longer term item, I think we are interested in not only showing the number of impressions forecasted, but potentially like the reach of a campaign. So how many individual users you would reach, and potentially, the number of ads each of those users would see on average.
Fantastic. Hopefully that answers the question. Couple more. Are there any accuracy numbers on forecasting performance?
So yeah, this is something we thought about a lot in the product development process. So right now we don't have any sort of like accuracy number or a confidence interval. It's something we're interested in supporting in the future, but right now we don't have any sort of customer facing version of that number available. again, that's something we're kind of monitoring internally as we want to fine tune the model. And eventually, I think there is thought about like exposing something like a confidence interval. However, that's not currently supported in any capacity.
Perfect. One more question we have so far in the queue, and it is there API availability for forecasting?
There's not an API available for forecasting at this point in time. Again, it's something that we're really interested in pursuing in the longer term. I think there were some sort of considerations around how we wanted to present that for customers in an optimal way. And so what we made on the product side, we made a decision to release in a UI facing version first, and pursue like an API once we get some more feedback on the UI version of the product.
Perfect. Thanks, Tyler. While we wait for more questions to trickle in, I'm putting out a last call right now. Haven't seen any questions come out yet. So this is the final last call before I say, have a great day, guys. All right. I think that's a wrap. Thanks again, everyone. Thanks again, Tyler, for joining us. And thanks again, everyone, for popping in. Bye.